So I don't really know how to start this, so I'm kind of just gonna go. But basically, I got fired from my job on, let's see, today's Sunday. I got fired on Thursday morning, and it kind of made me want to talk about my experience with drugs and alcohol. So basically, I don't really know what is gonna come out of this video. Like you can basically not take any. It's just like a fun little story, like whatever. You don't need to. There's no moral. There's no. You can. Oh man, this is deep. Like it doesn't matter, right? Like, just if you want to infer something from this, you can. If you don't, like, it doesn't matter. And I'm gonna probably share some opinions, but at the end of the day, that's how I view it, and I'm a completely different human than you. So whatever. Anyways, I grew up absolutely no alcohol, whatever. There were some cigarettes every now and then, but around the time I started to get a personality, the cigarettes went away. No alcohol whatsoever in my household. I went to a private religious school up until I was 10 or 11. I don't even think I ever seen alcohol until I was in my late teens. I didn't know what it was. Like, I didn't know what liquor was. I didn't know what beer was. I kind of had like a faint understanding. Like one time I wrote a fiction story in one of my classes or something like that, and I was describing an underage child that was drinking beer. I really just didn't know anything about it, right? I was very uninformed. But anyways, I was like 16, 17, high school, whatever. That's when like people started drinking alcohol, people started smoking weed. I've never actually had a cigarette, but I had smoked. And so, like, I think I was like 16, maybe just about to turn 17 when I first had my first alcohol, and it was hard liquor. It was Aristocrat, freaking nasty. Poor people alcohol because we're high school kids or whatever. And it was fun. We drink every now and then, but we knew that we were breaking the rules, right? So there was no one with alcohol experience to kind of guide us, right? So me and my friends, whatever parties, whatever, we'd get together, and drink, and we didn't really know what to do. And I remember one night I got this bottle of Southern Comfort. I had someone who was above 21 buy it for me, right? And I went to this party, and I didn't put two and two together. I'm like, oh, you know what? I've drank water, I've drank soda before. You just kind of sip on it and enjoy your night. So I'm doing that with this Southern Comfort, and before I know it, this like liter bottle of Southern Comfort, this huge bottle, is almost completely gone, and it's exclusively to me. I'm drinking it straight out of the bottle. I'm like, this tastes nasty, but it's fine. And I lose control. I get so drunk that night. I get super drunk, like insanely drunk, because I just had no idea, no limits. And that's kind of the trend for how I would describe people who don't have drug education when they enter drugs. They're just very naive. They don't know what they're getting themselves into. If you're a grown man or whatever, you have a job, you have like a wife and kids or whatever, and you drink a whole bottle of Southern Comfort by yourself, like it is some kind of occasion. Like you are having a depressive episode, like some kind of huge party. No, not even responsible drinkers that are doing it to have fun even do that, because at that point it's not even fun. Like literally no one does that unless you have a problem, right? But little 17-year-old me, I wasn't aware of that, right? Yeah, I think I had just turned 17 at this time, because my birthday's in February and this party happened in April. Yeah. Anyways, I go home. I'm also smoking that night, but I wasn't really high. I was just kind of like smoking just because everyone was doing it, and after for a while, I'm like, oh, weed is bad, weed is illegal. I don't want to go to jail for smoking weed, I think that right around the time I graduated high school was when weed started to become legal in some parts of the States and like Canada and all that, I'm from the United States, and like, I didn't really smoke much weed. I would smoke weed every now and then, but it really wasn't my thing, But anyways, I hear these stories of these people that are like, oh my god, I was so enlightened by this drug, or like, cocaine was such a fun experience, or people are like, yeah, everyone in their life does cocaine at a point, like everyone has tried cocaine at least once, it's just a normal thing. I'm like, alright, stuff like that. I've never actually done cocaine, but stuff like that's like the stories you hear, because people who never had problems treat it like it's not a big deal, right? And because it never was to them, but it's a big deal to some people, and you can never find out until it's too late. But anyways, so let's see, I was 17 in 2016, And I'm just drinking every now and then. I'm kind of losing control. My friends, every time we get together, my friends like, "You're such an annoying drunk. You really need to limit yourself." And I'm like, that was kind of an eye opener for me. Like, I should limit myself with alcohol, right? Just for the fact that when I get so drunk, I get really annoying, and it's not fun to be around me, right? And that was the eye opener for me, right? I'm like, oh, okay. But I'm like, so that kind of I'm like 18 at this point, that's kind of like an eye opener. Like, oh, okay, I see what's happening, like, you can't just go completely every single night that you drink. It can't be like completely harder than the previous one, if I had adult supervision with me the whole time, if I had people who were old enough to drink with me because these teenagers are going to drink anyways, right? Like, whether or not it's illegal or not is not going to stop a 17-year-old from drinking, right? But if I was in like a controlled, legal, supervised environment, it probably would have been a lot better, right? But anyways, one of my friends I've met, he's telling me about like acid trips that he goes on. He's like, oh, it's very cool. He's like, I had a lot of reflections to my childhood, like, I kind of just learned a lot about myself, whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. He's like, you want to start smoking weed? And I'm like, you seem very, very relaxed, very chill. You seem like you do not have a problem, and you seem like a lot more content with your life. So yeah, I'd love to spend time with you. And if spending time with you means that's the activity, then sure. And so we start smoking, and I'm like smoking out of a bong for like the first time, whatever, in my life. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is like spring of 2018. So I graduated high school in 2017. So this is like a freshman, sophomore year of college. And I'm doing that with this guy, and eventually and one of my friends comes around, and I'm like, man, I'm so interested in trying LSD, is what I tell her. I tell her mostly as a joke, but I'm like, oh, I just want to learn and know more about the world, And keep in mind, I have the mentality, but it's still kind of in the back of my head that you can't go hard, but I have the mentality that going hard all the time is okay, right? And so I do that, and I go really hard all the time I smoke, all the time I drink, I'm not putting two and two together that you can just sip on something. And actually, right around this time, probably like the end of 2018, is when I learned to sip. Not when I like take 10 shots every night. When I learn, I'll have like 3 beers. Like that's when I learned that you can do that when there's alcohol around. You don't need to get completely drunk each time. And it took a lot of learning experience. I'm lucky that I never had a problem with alcohol. Because like, what if I did have a problem with alcohol? What if alcohol made me super freaking... What if I was super dependent on it or something like that, right? Like, and just how these people that are like, oh, we all tried cocaine and we never had a problem with it. It's the same deal with me and alcohol, right? Alcohol is a bit more socially acceptable because, it's legal. But it's still, it's not as black and white with cocaine. Alcohol basically, it's like just a liquid form of something that gets you in a weird state of mind. But anyways, I start doing LSD with this guy, and he's a bit more responsible than me. He knows his limits. He's like, you got to start low and then work your way up, right? But because of the fact that it's 100% illegal, there is by definition no known, safe, regulated way to like help you with it. And also because it's illegal, you get it from black market, so you actually have no idea what you're taking, right? So my dealer claims that each of these tabs is 150 mics. But is that true? I do not know. They could be 90 mics, they could be 300 mics. That's what he claims for them to be. Anyways, the first tab I take is one of my friend's tabs. It's 90 mics. It was fun. I see like a little bit of weird colors. I get really giddy. That's basically what it is. I'm laughing and I'm like seeing funny colors. I'm like, dang, this is freaking fun, man. I'm like, I'm having so much fun. It's like I'm at an amusement park, And I start myself off low, and I'm lucky that I was with someone who was familiar with it. But keep in mind, he's not like a complete expert. He knows his limits, right? He's never been around other people that did. And he has had problems with it before. Notably his, at the time, girlfriend. They're married now, but his at the time girlfriend, every time she'd take it, she'd freak out. One time she called the police because she was convinced that there were dead bodies around her. She was like, and she went to the hospital and all that. She has like very conservative, like super old-fashioned Vietnamese parents, right? If they ever found out that she was doing this, like they would disown her, right? So she's like, I gotta hide it, like why would, how often is it a good thing that you're hiding something from your parents, like truly, right? Like, it's not like your parents exist to impose evils upon you, right? Like, they think that they know something is right or whatever, and they're just trying to help you, right? Whether or not it actually is right is a different story, but they're trying to help you, right? So anyways, I'm not putting two and two together. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like, but everyone tries cocaine once in their life. Everyone tries LSD once in their life, whatever. Different strokes for different folks. I tried it once and I didn't have a problem. She has problems, that's just the difference between us. And she kind of likes having the problems. She kind of likes screaming and crying while she's on it. It's exhilarating for her. I've never been in a position in my life where I've screamed and cried because of fear, but so I don't know what it's like, But anyways, let's see here. Anyways, I try it some more. I go a little bit more intense the next time. I go like 150 mics. It's really exhausting. It takes all the energy out of me, but it was really fun. But it was just very exhilarating. And at this point, I'm like missing school and all that because I was so exhausted. I couldn't go to school. I'm like failing quizzes because I like was so tired the next day. I spent all of the whole like month was oriented around like, all right, I got to get this day off. I got to make sure I do all my homework, blah, 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 so that way I can look forward to this one thing. It's like my life was based around it, right? Because it was, to me, it was like going to an amusement park, right? It was like, dang, this is a fun little activity and I got to plan ahead of time so that way I can enjoy it to the max, Whereas, if you're someone who drinks alcohol, you do not plan your nights around drinking alcohol, right? It just happens to be like, oh, I'm having fun and there's some beers in the fridge. I'll have a beer or two, right? Like, that's it. But anyways, I do that. And then the next time I'm with him, I go really hard. I go like I do like 220 mics. And it's very similar to how I drink alcohol. The first time I'm taking a few shots. Next time, let's do 7 shots. Next time, let's do 10 shots. But they're two very, very, very different drugs. And they don't work like that, But when I go into it with the same mentality, there's no standardized way. There's no one who was helping me and educating me about this. I have to hide it from my parents. I'm scared, Like, you're like how that Vietnamese girl was hiding it from her parents, And so I do that, and I'm absolutely traumatized. It was so intense and way too much for me to handle. I call my friend after I begin to sober up. I'm like, please tell me happy words. Just say like rainbows and stuff. Like, please just make me feel good about myself, right? And he doesn't understand what's happening. He's like, dude, what's happening, right? And I am unable to recreate how I felt that time. And I feel like if I were to do it now, I feel like I'm in a good state of mind and I feel like I'd be okay. But I know I'm not. I have to take past me's word for it and be like, the amount of fear and the amount of just terrifying feelings that I felt, I cannot comprehend. I cannot grasp the true form of Gygas's attack. That's what that was. I could not grasp the true form of what was happening, right? So even if I feel like I'm okay, I'm just going to take my past self word for it and be like, don't do it. So now I've been to the point where I've had a problem with drugs. I'm like, oh crap, I was naive and I jumped into this and I didn't know what I was doing. So now I feel like I'm so like enlightened, like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then when I tell people, they're like, oh, I'm drinking or oh, I'm doing cocaine. I'm like, nope, that's not okay. And then they get mad at me like, no, you don't understand, man. Like, drugs don't exist as bad. Like, you're just listening to your parents because people try to tell you that drugs are bad, right? Like, you are naive and you don't know what's happening. And I'm like, being naive is what got me. All of us are naive. It's truly playing with God, right? That's kind of how I feel it, Some people, you don't know. It's Russian roulette. Like, you go into it, you don't have a problem. You go into it and you do have a problem. And you never know until you jump into it. Anyways, I'm in a very bad state of mind for over a month. and I get put into a psych ward because I'm feeling really bad, and I'm in rehab for about like 5-6 days. They really helped me. I feel a lot better. It was very therapeutic, and they get me on some medicine. They get me on zyprexa, paxil, and vistaril. Zyprexa and paxil. I don't know what zyprexa is. Off the top of my head, paxil is an SSRI. What that is it is a drug that inhibits your serotonin receptors, so that way they cannot activate, because a lot of the time anxiety is related to serotonin or whatever, or serotonin tends to have like chains, like it's like, oh, this event produced serotonin before. It's just like a reaction to something, right? Anyways, I'm on that, the zyprexa and the paxil, and the zyprexa and the paxil are very, very, very powerful. And the vistaril, it's kind of like, it's just like if you're having a panic attack, it's supposed to calm you down. It's not like Xanax. It's far, far, far weaker than Xanax. And my psychiatrist knew that Xanax is by definition dangerous, and he wouldn't give it to me. Ooh, my phone's dinging. Let me turn that off. My psychiatrist knew. He knew that Xanax is by definition very, very dangerous, right? So he's like, I'm not giving you Xanax, right? He's like, I'll give you Vistaril, and I'll give you Zyprexa and Paxil. And I'm like, oh, okay, these doctors, they know what's best. They're gonna fix me, they're gonna help me. And they did help me, after I started taking Paxil and Zyprexa for a few months, few weeks, whatever, I started feeling really good. I stopped feeling like scared all the time, whatever. But I was naive, much like how I was naive with alcohol and with LSD, and I just kind of jumped into it, and I just trusted what these people who claimed to be experts knew what they were doing. And I will admit, they did help me, and I'm overall glad that it happened. But it wasn't all fun and games. These drugs had huge, very strong side effects, right? Firstly, the Zyprexa made me very sleepy, and I gained like 30 pounds. I was hungry all the time, and I was tired. I was missing a lot of work because I kept sleeping in. I was sleeping in so much. I missed so much school because I was sleeping. I was just asleep all the time because it's very powerful. And I look it up, and I'm like, oh, Zyprexa is sometimes correlated to... Zyprexa is sometimes prescribed for people who wake up in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That tells me why I'm sleeping all the time, right? So I get a new psychiatrist because I actually lost my old psychiatrist because I missed an appointment with him because I overslept. And I get a new one, and I tell her about it, and I decide to just ultimately go off it. I just stop taking it straight up, and I feel fine. But there's still Paxil. And one of the side effects of Paxil is the inability to orgasm. And that was very annoying for me. Like 99% of the time, I could not orgasm, right? And I was like, dang, this is really freaking annoying. So then, I went to my psychiatrist, and I'm like, I can't orgasm. And she's like, here, take this medicine. Well, she gave me some options, and the option I went with was to take a medicine that will make it so I can orgasm. The side effect is that it makes you anxious, and she told me that. And I start feeling anxious after I take it. I'm like, no, I can't do this. So I stopped taking it, and I was like, I'll just stand with my inability to have kids. It's fine, right? I'm still missing a lot of work, though. I'm still sleeping in all the time. I'm missing a lot of school and a lot of work, and I'm always absent, and I'm sleeping like 20 hours a day. Like, at minimum, I'm sleeping 15 hours a day, but usually it's like 20 hours a day. I'm really tired all the time. I'm missing everything. I'm losing money. And I missed so much work while in Paxil. I actually got fired from my job. They're like, you missed 76 hours, right? And so they fired me. And I'm like, dang, this really freaking sucks. And I got off of Paxil. I actually was in the process of getting off of Paxil because my work was mad at me. And by the time I managed to get off it, the damage had already been done, and I already missed too much, so they fired me. But, I was getting off of the Paxil, and I'm finally off it, and I'm on something else now called Prozac. And I feel a lot better, but this is just all I don't know where I'm going with this, but this is just all to say. Pretty much no one knows what these things are going to do to you, and it's different to every single person, whether it's a prescription drug or not. In general, and this is a very big general, like, this is 99% of the time, the psychiatrists and the doctors, they know what they're talking about, right? Listen to them. And I would say also in general, if some kind of medicine gets introduced to your life, be skeptical. No matter who's introducing it to you, whether it's a doctor or whether it's your friend or whatever, don't just take it willy-nilly, right? You need to be skeptical about everything. And if you jump into something and you're skeptical about it, I'm kind of the belief that you'll end up getting a problem because you went in it with a bad attitude. So maybe by listening to this video, I've kind of just ruined your ability to take a lot of drugs. But you know, I feel like if I were not to unlock the ability for you to have a bad time with drugs, something else would have, right? And you don't want to jump into something until it's a problem, right? You don't want to have a problem and have a reason to stop doing something, right? I have since quit drinking alcohol. I've never had a problem with alcohol where I've been like addicted and I need to drink every day. But you know, considering my past and considering how much problems I've had with other things, or when I first started drinking alcohol and I was really jumping into it very naive, that's ultimately what made me decide to stop drinking alcohol, right? I unfortunately learned the hard way. And you know, it's very specific to me. It's different for every person. You could take freaking meth and feel fine the next day and it's fine, right? And some people, they take meth and they kill themselves because when they're not on meth and they look at a set of stairs, they feel like they're too weak and they just don't have it in them to climb the set of stairs, and they're like, I can't do this, and then they commit suicide, right? It's different for every person, and I am just of the belief that you don't want to jump into something and then find out that it's too late and you're like, oh crap, I've already ruined my life. But that's my 2 cents on it.